Welcome back to the broadcast. Through Operation Educate, an audio documentary called The Road to Independence is available free of charge to classrooms across America. The CD features an original music score and the voice and talent of Emmy award-winning actor Jay Thomas as John Adams. Thank you for joining us this morning.
My pleasure, Michael. Good to be here with you.
Good to have you. How did this get started?
Well, we wanted to do a feature for our radio show on Sirius Satellite Radio. And every year we talk about doing this, and nothing ever gets done. And I think we started talking about, well, it is the 4th of July, so why don't we do something about Independence Day?
Was this last year or the year before?
This was in 2007. Okay. And so I sat down and I started reading about the Declaration of Independence. And what you find out is that there hasn't really been a telling of the actual story since 1906.
So what have we gotten all these years? The PC version or something?
Well, it's not that you've gotten the PC version. You haven't gotten the tale of actually how this miracle came together. Okay. Because it is a miracle of events that actually transpired that literally changed the world. But it's not so much, it is about the document itself, but it's also the story of the men and how did they come up with the idea? There's no manual, there's no Declaration of Independence for Dummies or 101 or anything. So whose idea was this? And that's really when I started researching it and finding out that although there were books written about it, about the actual Declaration, but not about how it was written, who wrote it, and what did those guys think that it meant. So that was the genesis. That was the idea behind the creation.
So, Jay, when you started reading, what exactly did you find that said, okay, I don't remember it from the history books or from history class as I'm reading it now, as I'm finding out now?
Well, the first thing you find out is there is some mythology. There wasn't a lot of signing that went on the 4th of July. Second thing is you find out is there was a committee that was put together called the Committee of Five to actually draft the Declaration. And if there's no Committee of Five, then there's no Declaration, because people just think that Thomas Jefferson was sitting at Monticello going, I think this would be pretty good to write a Declaration of Independence. But that's not what happened. There was a resolution on the floor of Congress called the Lee Resolution. And Richard Henry Lee was a legislator from Virginia, and it basically said, I can give you the real short version, that these colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. They're absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown. So the Lee Resolution is actually in the Declaration. It's at the end.
Right.
So, but you learn a lot about the men. There were 56 men in that Congress. And I challenge most people, can you name more than 5? Can you name the Committee of 5? And so when you start reading about it, there's some really good stories there of what these men went through. And it's from a historical perspective, I think it's things that when you learn this, you have a greater respect for what that product that they created was. When you learn their story, then you have a lot greater respect for the Declaration and for their work, because, as I said, there was no manual to do this. So this all happened in real time, and it's just an amazing story.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this. Why don't schools, classes, teachers, why don't they teach what really happened? I mean, the real story behind this.
I think one of the problems is the real story hasn't been told in a long time. As I said, the last time this was committed to paper was by a man named Joseph Hazelton. That was in 1906. You can't even get Hazelton's book anymore. And Hazelton in 1906, in the preface to his book, he said, I'm writing this so that the American people never forget the heritage and the liberty that was fought for in 1776 and the story of the Declaration. So it's not that teachers don't teach it, because they do. But you only get the storybook, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That's just that's the preamble part of it. The real meat and potatoes of it is that when any government starts usurping your liberty, you have the right to alter or abolish it. And to make sure you don't forget that, Thomas Jefferson puts that in there twice. That's in there twice. 56 words separate the actual statement. We are free and independent states, and when a government becomes destructive of liberty's ends, the people have a right to alter or abolish it. Revolutionary concept at the time.
Now, you have a radio show, a radio program. Have you talked about this on your program?
all the time. And people just are so hungry for historical knowledge and for the telling of America's story, especially the founding around that era. It's amazing. I would never have thought that that would be so attractive, but when you start telling the stories, not just about the Declaration, about the Constitution, anything in early America, because the interesting thing about it, Michael, is that these things were being created in real time.
Exactly.
We look back on it and take it for granted. Oh, yeah, sure, that's how they did it. Well, when they were doing it, there was no that's how you do it.
There was no blueprint.
There was no blueprint. They were making it, and I think that that's really just the stories and the actual events that happened are just amazing, and especially viewed inside the prism that this was an ad lib. All this stuff was ad lib or ad hoc, if you will, made up as they went along.
Let's talk about a clip that we're going to play here. It's about 40 seconds long. It's about one of the battles, I believe.
Sure.
And let's listen to this and then come back and talk about that.
Sure.
The Battle of Bunker Hill had taken place just weeks before the Declaration of Taking Arms was written on 17 June 1775. The battle actually took place mainly on what was known as Breed's Hill. General Washington was not yet in command of the Continental Army, which was led then by General Israel Putnam, Old Put as he was called by his men. This is where the immortal words of Putnam were bellowed to his men.
Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes!
Though no one has ever corroborated the famous line, a pair of patriots under Putnam's command, John Starks and Joseph Reed of the 3rd New Hampshire Regiment, did record Old Put's orders that day.
Powder is scarce and must not be wasted.
The truth is actually better than the fiction when it comes to this stuff.
Isn't that a great story?
It really is.
That was a lot of fun to write that scene and to act it out, too. To put all those guns and everything in there.
Are you going to someday put this to video?
I would love to put it to video. We're actually working on another documentary called Publius, The Story of We the People. So it's almost like the Star Wars trilogy for history. We have Act 1, A New Hope. Act 2 will be The Empire Striking Back, and then Act 3, I think, will be The Bill of Rights.
Well, what's the reaction when you take this to classrooms?
Because it's just out on CD. So this school year will be the first school year that it's actually in classrooms.
Are you getting invitations to come in and talk about it and to play it?
I have not yet, but the year is young. We're in 27 states, including Louisiana. It's also available for homeschooling parents. There's no, we don't ask any questions. If you're a teacher and you request a copy, we send it to you.
And this is for free?
Absolutely free, shipping included.
Why? Why
tax,
free?
title, license, the whole.
Why free?
To make it available. Well, it's not my story to start with.
Right.
And if I'm going to put it out as an educational vehicle, then I want as many people to have access to it as possible, because I think that when you hear this story, when you relive this story, it may cause you, well, I don't think may, I think it does, it will cause you to think differently about your freedom and your liberty, and maybe not take it for granted. But the people that buy actual copies of the documentary can choose when they buy a copy to make a donation. And that's why, so we're not really giving it for free, per se.
Right.
It is funded privately. We won't accept any grants, no money from any governing authority, never will. This is all driven by people. This is a totally organic, grassroots effort.
All right. Mike Church's Road to Independence. You got to come back and see us and tell us how this is doing with some of the schools.
I'd be delighted, Michael. Anytime.
And when we come back, this broadcast, the Great American Seafood Cook-Off and the Louisiana Alligator Soiree.